Good morning, everyone. Loremaster of SoTech here, and I hope you're all doing well this morning. This is going to be a nice early morning video because CA is releasing this at an ungodly hour as far as an American is concerned. But we have the dev blog post for patch 6.2. So if you'll come along with me, so to speak, we're going to work our way through this, check out all of the new information. For those unaware, this patch is supposed to focus on items, I believe, as well as bringing 2 new units to the game with the Hobgoblin Bolt Thrower and the Blood Knights. The Blood Knights with Sword and Shield. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Hey folks, next week, very nice, we're going to publish the release notes for 6.2 as well as the update itself. Ahead of then, we're going to get a direct chat from good old William. In 6.2, we're going to focus an extensive revision to magic items, an introduction of AI improvements tested in the Proving Grounds, introduction of a few new magic items, and the arrival of 2 new units. Excellent. Sit tight for full release notes next week, which we will of course go over then. So all right, let's see what we got. Greetings. Alongside the item balancing changes that we have on the horizon, the magic rework team I'll be talking to today is pretty comprehensive effort for all of us, our team, to unify our design approaches to generic magic items across the entire game. It's helped us to build a consistent framework that ensures that the items you get to meet meet the expectation you have for rarity. If it looks cool, it should feel cool when you use your loadouts. I will say, for me personally, when it comes to magic items, the biggest thing that I would personally hope for is that I really dislike the current combining system, the fusing system. I like the ability to fuse excess items, but I hate how random it is. The biggest thing that I've been pushing for at least a year, 2 years, however long it's been, is I really want it to work where if you combine 2 items, you get the same type of item, right? So if I combine, if you're going to make it where I have to combine 2 gray or common arcane items to get a green item or an uncommon, I should get an arcane item, guaranteed. Like, I should get the same type of item. I hate this system right now because it gives you a random item, which for me turns out to be extremely frustrating most of the time because it feels like I always end up getting an item I don't need. Like, I'll have a billion magic weapons and I'll have some magic armors that I want to upgrade, and it'll be like, oh, you want you want another piece of like magic, so I'm like, oh, I'll combine these 2 green magic armor so I can get a blue magic armor, and it'll be like, nope, here's another blue weapon, you know, hate you. And it's like, oh, fuck. So I'm really hoping they're gonna make that better, but let's see what we have here. Why now? Well, since the release of our first entry in this series, magic items have generally been added in line with major releases through Warhammer 1.2.3, with some further additions made alongside the release of new races such as Bretonia, Chaos Dwarfs, Tomb Kings, etc., many of which you have no doubt experienced. We haven't then taken on the duty of we haven't then taken off enough of a duty of care to keep them updated. Additionally, while each iteration was always made with the very best of intentions, none of those iterations ever shared a balancing framework. Over the years, this has understandably caused a significant disparity between items in a variety of locales. Hell yeah, it has. We've had a particular problem with items appearing as 1 rarity, but being significantly stronger or weaker than the rarity they were given. 10% spell resistance for a rare? What a bargain! Yeah, spell resistance in particular is a really terrible effect. Like, it's not useless. It isn't. It's just that only getting spell resistance feels really bad on items because it doesn't feel fun. So hopefully they've been looking at that. So what have we done? Well, at the heart, our solution is a cost budget matrix. Under the hood, items have always had what's called a uniqueness score, which helps to determine what rarity the item should appear in and how common that item should drop. Okay. For example, an item between 0 and 29 uniqueness would appear as a common item. As part of this work, we've weaponized that score to also drive our closest approximation of the true value of an item, treating it as a budget to spend on the cost matrix point for point on its effects. For example, we might take an item with a budget of 45 uniqueness points, which is a decent common in our new ranges. Okay, so items are going to be a lot more powerful if they're going up like almost double in points, and dole it out as follows. So if we were to give an item 15% physical fire resistance, it's 1.2 uniqueness points per point of fire resist, which means that you have, if I'm understanding that correctly, which means that to get 15% fire resist, you're spending 18 uniqueness points. And then to get 8 bonus versus large, which cost 3.5 uniqueness points per point, which gets you to 28. That then gives you a total value of 46 by combining those two. That's very cool. This is a very simple item with no modifiers or more complex stats, but showcases the general idea that items have a consummate power budget that is equated with how rare they are now. Additionally, we have a variety of modifiers that take effect to apply these calculations, such as strong synergies applied at all units in force, or excessive stacking of a single stat, which further affect the final score of an item. Okay, so that's super cool. So that means all of the values that an item can potentially have give you a flat score, but there are certain combinations that will be taken into account that will further complicate that score. So if you have an item that gives you like very high melee attack, but it also gives you a notable bonus to weapon strength, that could be a potentially powerful synergy. Or if something gives you like a notable speed bonus and it also gives you the Strider effect, that could be a notable synergy. Or maybe something like it gives you plus 10% health and regeneration. That could be a very strong synergy. Applied at all units in force, so that's basically saying that if you have an item that gives everyone in your army an ability, so like you equip an item and it gives every unit in your army 10% physical resistance, that's going to be significantly more expensive than if it was just 10% physical resist for the character. And then excessive stacking of a single stat, which is going to be a further modifier where if it just gives you a ton of a singular stat. So if something's giving you like 20 bonus versus large instead of just like 5. All right. So it's very much our intent that this new system will give us a platform to effectively more regularly iterate on our existing colossal backlog of items, as well as ensure we have the right tools to balance new magic items that come in the future too. When designing revisions of this nature, we always look to set goals that will help us measure the effects of our changes. When you get hands-on with the update next week, we'd very much like to hear how you feel we've met these standards. So we have the bullet points, provided strong guidelines for general item design with a little wiggle room for special cases. While this aims to standardize our approach, it does not establish it as an iron rule that can't be broken. For instance, if an item ends up 10 to 15% outside the bounds of our usual rules, we're okay with it as long as it enhances your campaigns. Okay, so there might be some items that are a little bit more powerful than this new system would necessarily suggest, but if it's only a little bit and people like it, then who cares, right? Populate the item pool with all new effects. Plenty of effects have never been used in items before, such as generic sources of barrier or battle healing cap. Expanding the effect pool allows us to reduce the overlap of common choices and pushes the identity of each item even further. So that's super exciting. So seeing a bunch of effects that have been introduced to the game over the years through like new characters, new systems on their skill tree and all that stuff, bringing that to the item system, excellent. Make item rarity translate with item power level. Item rarity drives how common an item should appear as part of random generation. Ideally, this means that the items you see more rarely should generally be much more interesting, or at least a lot more powerful. Okay, great. And that I very much agree. So they're trying to get rid of the system of getting a blue item and having a feeling of disappointment because you got like, you know, the obsidian talisman. You're like, oh, this like 20% spell resist. Whoop-de-doo. You know, trying to get rid of those kinds of items, or at least make them powerful enough that when you get them, you go, oh, wow, okay, that's a nice item. Reduce UX overload of item management by raising impact and lowering frequency of interaction. We've received regular reports from players who find that management of excessive amounts of items is frustrating or boring. We're aiming to reduce the number of decisions being made, but make each of the decisions that you do make a bit more notable. I don't know if I 100% agree with that. So that's basically saying that they're wanting to make items more impactful, but you get less of them, which I'm a little worried about. Like, I know I've had, it depends on what characters you're playing, but I know I have played with characters where it can feel really frustrating trying to get items, especially because a lot of factions don't have a guaranteed way to get items since we're not able to explore ruins anymore. I am someone that has been very, very, very pro bring back ruins exploration to allow people to like have interactions and get items and stuff, but we'll see what this goes. It's a lot of pen and paper work, a lot of which we know doesn't always look flashy out of the gate. Based on our playtesting and feedback we've received so far, we know this is a massive positive step forward in the areas of the game. Eagle-eyed among you may have spied that we look to rework magic items much earlier than next week's update. Yeah, I think it was back in the spring, early spring. Maybe it might have been before that, actually. But when we play tested many of the changes that we originally had in mind, we realized that the scope we had was way bigger than we initially thought, and our internal feedback caused us to hold back on deploying an earlier version of these changes until we could solve for the best possible version of this work. Our original scope just wasn't big enough. Originally, we had a short list of 80 items. That's it. Oh my. We had a short list of around 80 items that we knew needed a good pass to bring them up to our new standard, with the intent of making further iterations to over several patches. That alone never felt quite right, so we went back to the kitchen and ensured our rebalance didn't just apply to 10% of our items, but the over 800 common, uncommon, and rare items we have in the game today. Awesome. That's a great choice. I'm really glad they didn't do that. I'm glad they didn't do that. I think this was a better choice. Ooh, okay. We'll save the exciting stuff at the bottom there. We also knew that we didn't originally have sufficient gaps in the min-max ranges of power when evaluating items based on their rarity. Items that were valued at 29 uniqueness, which was the highest possible for a common item in the old system, and 30 uniqueness, which was the lowest value for an uncommon item in the old system, were pretty much indistinguishable. It made the common feel really powerful relative to its tier, and the others feel super weak when compared to other items in that tier. Fair. We don't like that either, so to fix that, we've rebalanced the redistribution of item uniqueness so that all rarity tiers now sit much higher on the scale overall, but with a tighter focus on their range as well as higher minimum power levels. For example, a common item used to be between 0 and 29, but now it has to be between 35 and 50. Whoa, okay, so that is significant. Wow, so that means all common items are going to be substantially more powerful than they were. Probably all items are going to be more powerful than they were. But that also means there's a much tighter window for each of the item types. So there's going to be less wild variation for each type, which I think is good. I think that's a great choice. We've also introduced air gaps between our rarity tiers. Common items no longer end at 39. Well, we see now they end at 50. And uncommons no longer start at 30. When the changes go live, we're setting a 30-point gap between these two tiers. So commons now end at 50, and uncommons only start appearing at 80, helping them feel much more valuable by comparison. That's a great change. That is a very, very smart change. So that's going to make it where it is significantly less likely that you're going to find common items that feel better than your uncommons or your rares or your unique items. They're going to be completely different ballparks. Awesome. That's going to be great. That's also going to make item fusing a lot more valuable. In our iteration, we also realized the value of specific effects was out of proportion with what was actually perceived as valuable. So we completely scrapped our original matrix and rebuilt the entire thing based on internal feedback. For example, we knew that some of the original effects didn't feel great when they were the only effect on an item, such as spell resistance or charge bonus. Very fair. So we've used the expanded budget and revised scoring matrix that we now have to make sure those effects are never stand alone, unless they're being given in truly excessive amounts. Of course, there are certain items that were considered iconic, partially due to having very powerful effects, that were brought too low by the balance adjustment. Since that initial version we playtested, we revised that to ensure our new systems apply a status quo ethos to the changes that we've made. Previously, if an item was powerful for its tier, we'd have brought it down to an appropriate power level. But on review, we've taken a hard stance of pushing the item up instead, helping to keep the core of what made certain items special firmly intact. That's really, really good. That's good. So instead of when applying this new matrix, if you have an item that everybody loves, right? If there's an item that was just beloved that people were like, no, I always love when I get this item. It's super powerful. It feels really good. But in the new system, it wasn't appropriate for it to have that level of power. Instead of just downgrading it so that it would like fit in the new, let's say it was an uncommon item, right? So instead of downgrading it so that it fits in the new uncommon tier versus the new rare tier, instead being like, no, let's keep the effects. And if that means it needs to bump up to a rare item, then it bumps up to a rare item. Okay, good. So if an item was common with the power level rare, we made it rare. Okay, well, they just explained what I was going to explain, but they're on it. If the item was instead finding itself in no man's land, so it was caught somewhere between the categories, such as too strong for an uncommon, but it was too weak for a rare, we've again pushed the item up, adding more stats in order to help it sit right with its new tier. But what if an item was rare previously, but really felt quite weak and truthfully was more like a common? There are some items that we've looked at and opted to downgrade them to commons, and some that we've opted to keep as rare, but given it has a rare's budget worth of stats, then upgrade it. This one's a little more vibe driven. Some items scream powerful by name and description, and so those ones were more likely to have been pushed up. It's a pretty loose rule of thumb, these niche cases, but in general, if you liked an item, it will at worst be rarer, but it will never be weaker. That is excellent, excellent, excellent news. Some items have been completely reworked if we felt they didn't quite have the legs in their current form, but this didn't affect many of the stronger items you've come to know and love. Here are some examples of how this translates in game. So we have, the Scroll of Stone. Okay, I mean, I always felt the Scroll of Stone was pretty damn powerful because it was a really good ability. So now the scrolls, so it used to give you the Assault of Stone spell, which is a really good bombardment spell. But now it gives you, immediately causes wall breaches when besieging. Damn. Still gives you the Assault of Stone ability, and also gives you Wall Breaker. Oh, that's cute. Okay, so you put that on a character, and they gain the ability to attack walls, and, smash walls down like they're, it's like a person turn. Okay, that's very funny to me, because that means you can have, like, a skink priest gain the ability to attack walls like a giant, which is just very funny. It's not useful at all. Obviously you want to put that on more powerful combat characters, or like characters with monster mounts, but the idea of putting it on some garbage tier hero is very funny. But the fact that it immediately causes wall breaches, this is an excellent siege item now. Like, this is great. That's a huge upgrade. Obsidian Lodestone. Used to only give 10% spell resist. Now it gives 10. Is that 10 still? Yeah. Now it gives 10% spell resist and 350 barrier hit points. Awesome. Okay, so that's great. So now the Obsidian, it looks like the Obsidian series is going to give you at least the Obsidian Lodestone, the Obsidian, it's like the Talisman and then the Amulet, I think, are going to give barrier hit points in addition to their spell resist. That's great. That's awesome. That's an item that actually has some legs defensively, because not only are you getting higher damage resist against abilities and spells, but you're also just getting essentially a regenerating health pool that never runs out as long as the character stays alive. Fantastic. Scimitar of the Sun Resplendent used to only give 8 melee attack and 12 bonus versus infantry. Now it also grants flaming attacks, which makes sense, and it also gives 20% vigor loss reduction. Very nice. So, I mean, that was a pretty good item. 12 bonus versus infantry is not something you should sneeze at. But that just makes it better. Everbleed. Oh, Everbleed got a big buff. So Everbleed has gone from a common item to a rare item, and it used to give magic attacks and poison. Now it gives magic attack, fear, terror, and the disembowel effect, meaning it causes damage, it drains hit points. So it actually does what it says it does. That's super cool. It does what it says. So Everbleed makes you bleed out, so that you take damage over time. Excellent. I will say, the one thing I'm a little worried about with the item change is I'm curious if they fix the bug where if you have a lot of status effects or contact effects on an attack, the game like doesn't let you keep them all. So like if I have Everbleed and I also do poison and I also have like, also I've realized my hair is like partially invisible because everything's so bright, but deal with it. it's digital lice. I don't know. But it's like if you have multiple contact effects. So like, let's say you have burnt, everbleed, and poison, that it can cause an issue where the game doesn't register all of them, and it's like kind of pseudo random which ones will be applied. So you might miss out on your most powerful contact effect because a different contact effect is being applied that's not as good. So hopefully this patch is coming with a fix for that, because if a lot of items are going to have things like this, then there's going to be a lot of stacking effects in this game. On the item availability side of things, the first topic we want to address is item spam. In any given campaign, standard campaign, we generally find that a player will wind up with tens of used items going into the hundreds and much longer campaigns. This extreme amount of items can cause knock-ons to other effects, especially the UI. We often find that equipping items can become much more difficult and tedious, given that you find yourself having to search through too many items in order to find the ones that you may actually want to use. This means extra scrolling and hovering over tooltips and an AI that's not really designed to feature such a breadth of items. In areas such as item fusing, a large amount of items also degrades the usability of this feature, given that you'll require 2 items per fusing, creating a lot of clicking just to rid yourself of unwanted items. So what have we changed? In general, there's now a lower drop rate for all items, reducing the amount that you'll gain across a campaign. We're confident that this is a positive change given the huge amount of items that you can currently acquire. The drop rates are now at a much more sensible level, which when paired with our approach to make items generally more powerful, getting less items is the best balancing consideration we could look to make. It's also worth noting that all item drop chance effects remain unchanged across the game, so if you like, you can still build your faction around becoming an item dropping machine if that's your style and your faction choice makes that possible. We've also moved on to ensure that there are smarter and more player-centric item drops. This is a fancy way of saying that the items you receive in your campaigns are now pseudo-random instead of true random. How is that going to work? It's no secret that almost all games slightly modify outcomes to provide the best possible gameplay experience. We're entering, this is how the sausage gets made territory here, so if you'd rather preserve the magic of game development, when we scroll on, we'll read it. Until now, item drops have been completely true random. Going forward, however, the game will understand which items have already dropped in your campaign, what items you are and are not using, offering up items that we can see you don't have already, instead of giving you more items that are similar to the ones we can see that are just sitting in your unused in your item pool. That's super cool. That's super cool. We ultimately want to provide you with the ability to build whatever playstyle you like from across the entire range of items in the pool, and prevent you from getting your 50th drop on an item you really don't like and never wanted in the first place. It's worth noting, before I move on and talk about item fusing, that even with the above change, the system won't ever hinder you, meaning that if you really want a particular item equipped on all your characters, then providing that you are actually using those items, there is no limit nor any effect on drop rate for these same items. Really, this change will only ever affect the unused items, in essence, shifting your drops in the direction of more varied items until eventually it finds ones that you start to use more of. That's really interesting. So for instance, like, you know, compared to the old system, if you were having the issue that I felt like I would always have, where you're getting like, I've got 1,000,000 fucking obsidian amulets, right? I'm not using them. I don't want them. They're just sitting in my inventory gathering dust. This will mean that because you're not using that item, the system will automatically adjust and make it less likely for you to get it. So you're more likely to get things that A, you haven't gotten yet, and B, things you're actively using. So if I have like a weapon, so let's say like the Blade of Realities, and I'm like, God, I love the Blade of Realities, I hope I'm getting more of these. As long as I'm consistently having it equipped and used on characters, it's going to remain likely that I'll discover more of them. That is very, very cool. With item fusing, one of the core issues has always been the sheer amount of items that you actually had impacted the usability of the feature. As such, we didn't make any real changes to the item selection functionality when fusing, purely because we feel that these issues were symptoms of the problems listed previously in this blog and weren't as much core issues. Generally, we now think that you'll find that you're fusing far fewer items given the reduction in items received, and much less of the time given the increase of each item's potential usage. What we have done is make a couple of fundamental changes to item fusing, however, which are providing a bit more usability and gameplay functionality. First, a fused item will now provide an item of the same category. Yes! Oh, that feels so good. Yes, that should have been in there from the start, but I'm super glad it's in there now. This means that if you really want a nice piece of armor, then you should simply fuse your existing armors. It's never really made any sense to turn 2 necklaces into a piece of armor, and equally so if you wanted to gain a specific type of item. The system we had wasn't really providing a reliable enough way to guarantee getting that. There are of course some pros and cons of both implementations. However, we felt this one is a bit better to make sure oh man, I'm so happy about that. I'm so happy about that. Like, if they want to introduce a system where you get a random item, that's fine, but that should be a different like recipe. Like, if I combine like 2 unrelated common items, like if I combine a gray arcane item and a gray armor, that should give me a random item, right? But if I'm combining 2 armors, I should get an armor. That's great. Second, rare items can now be fused into unique items. Whoa, that seems really fucking strong. Much like we have elsewhere in update 6.2, you'll find that we've been adding a bunch of new unique or purple tier items over the previous patches, and where possible, we'd love to keep doing that. Now, if you currently have a very low chance of getting these unique items as post-battle loot, but you can also now gain them by fusing rare blue items. However, the major caveat here is, there's only a small chance of success when fusing your rare items, and failure will result in producing a completely useless piece of scrap. Quite literally, just an item which can only be salvaged for scrap. So you can get money for it, but the item doesn't do anything. I love that. I love that. So if you play a faction that's very good at generating items, so like you go really heavy into like getting heroes and maxing out their scout potential, and going for traits and stuff that give you the higher % chance to steal magic items or discover magic items after a battle, you now have something to do with all those blues you don't need anymore. That's super cool. But it's not guaranteed. It's possible that they'll blow up on you. Before we get to talking about some of the new items that we're bringing in 6.2, a note on removing banner restrictions. This one's a very simple change, but we think it's something that's super positive. You can now equip any number of the same ancillaries to characters, providing that they themselves provide a banner. This means that if you've got a favorite banner, well, now you're no longer limited to 1 per army, allowing you to customize your forces a bit more neatly and evenly if you wish. That's super cool. There's very good balance and consideration as to why limits exist for other followers given the possibility of stacking effects, so we won't be making that change. However, for banners, the balancing implications is far less. That's okay. That's very cool. So if you really, really, really like a certain banner, let's say you really love the Swift Stride banner, right? Swift Stride banner, that's your favorite banner in the game. Basically, what this is saying is that of your 6 ancillary slots, you can now put the banner of swiftness in all 6 of them if you have 6 banners of swiftness. And you can equip it on just 6 different units in your army. That's very, very cool. I think that's going to definitely be more powerful for some factions than others. Think about the Beastmen, right? Or the dwarf. Hopefully, it'll be kind of similar. Hopefully, dwarfs will maybe be able to mess around with that with certain runes. But for like Beastmen, this would be cool because they have like some banners they can guarantee get through their system, their unique faction mechanics. And now you could stack all those banners in one army if you wanted to. Very, very cool. Unique items. Spoilers ahead. We're very pro spoiler here, so we're going to go ahead. All right. Yeah, we're degenerates. Hell yeah, we are. Unique items are always fun to create. These powerful and sometimes weird items add some really interesting gameplay choices, and the Warhammer lore has no shortage of such items for us to play with. In previous patches, we've been adding new unique items not linked to any specific character, and we're following that same approach once more in 6.2. We've taken the opportunity here to add some new unique items, with one in particular being extremely unique and very powerful indeed. So first, we have the Worm Slayer Sword, which I think originates from... I can't remember if that's actually from the core, one of the core rulebooks or like the Bretonnia book. But anyway, a sword famed for its ability to slay large foes. Any character wanting to bring down the biggest of enemies will find this sword more than capable. However, one will have to be aggressive and forego the ability to fight masses of infantry as easily. Okay, so these are all unique items, and they're not telling us exactly what they do, but they're giving us little story stuff. So this sounds like an item that's going to give you god tier anti-large, but it sounds like it's going to nuke your ability with anti-infantry. Actually, what I'm kind of wondering, I'm wondering if this is going to give you something absurd like plus 30 or plus 60 bonus versus large, but if it lowers your melee attack, because like if it just lowered your anti-infantry, that wouldn't really matter unless you already had anti-infantry. But if it lowers your melee attack by a bunch, so like if it's like minus 60 melee attack but plus 60 bonus versus large, that means that you would be a god when fighting other large targets, but you would be kind of fucking useless against infantry, which would be really interesting. That could be a very, very powerful item on like some kind of really maneuverable hero character. So very cool. The Scintillating Shield. A shield polished to extreme levels, now able to reflect almost anything, be that the charge of their enemies or magic itself. I am super curious how that's going to work. Okay, so it sounds like it's going to have charge reflection. So it's going to give you the charge reflection ability or passive, which makes it where when enemies charge you, you deal damage back to them. I wouldn't be surprised if this also gave you melee damage reflection, which also makes it that whenever someone attacks you in melee, it reflects damage. But reflecting magic? I don't think we have a system in game that currently does that. So I'm curious what that could mean. Like, I have no idea what that could mean, because, like, would it be that if you cast a spell on them, like, that spell is cast back on the wizard? Because that could be super cool. Like, you cast Fireball at them and it automatically casts Fireball back at you. Or if you cast Spirit Leech on them, it casts Spirit Leech on you. That could be super fascinating. That could be a genuinely amazing effect. Or it could be something as simple as, like, maybe it gives some kind of, like, effect to someone casting magic on the wielder. I'm very, very curious about that one. And to my knowledge, these are all generic items. Well, I don't know if they're all generic. I'm curious who they're all available to. The Accursed Armor. An extremely powerful piece of armor that offers the wearer immense defensive ability and even the ability to cheat death. However, the armor is not without its curses. So this is definitely grants you immortality, probably gives really big buffs to like ward save or armor or melee defense or any of those, but it comes with a curse, which is really interesting. I can't remember what the original Accursed Armor did in tabletop. Because I know the Accursed Armor is a thing, but I can't remember what it is. Very interesting though. I wonder what the curse will be. Briar Sheath. One of the most unique pieces of armor found anywhere in the world, if one can even call it armor. This mass of brambles and thorns, while not immensely useful as a means of protection, instead protects the wearer by virtue of being unrivaled and keeping them hidden from foes. Okay, so it's basically camo. Magic camo. So the Briar Sheath, I would presume, gives you unspottable, sniper. If it's a unique item, it probably also comes with lets you stay invisible even when casting magic. So basically, as long as you are not in combat, you are invisible, would be my guess. Or close to units that have like just the best abilities at spotting enemies. The Fellblade? Oh, the Fellblade's getting upgraded! Wait a second, that's a rare item. I've seen that one before. We felt that the iconic weapon that brought low the Lord of Undeath himself deserved to be more than just a regular item. Wielding this blade makes you vulnerable to its foul curse, sure to eventually perish. But every strike causes monstrous degenerative damage and executes the weakened. That sounds super cool. So, Fellblade was very straightforward in tabletop. It was a Skaven item originally, but I'm curious if this means it's not just going to be Skaven, like if you can find it elsewhere, or if it's still just going to be Skaven, it's just a unique Skaven item. But the Fellblade in tabletop was basically you would wield it, and it was super duper strong. But at the end of each combat phase, you basically rolled a die. I can't remember if it was when you were rolling to attack with it, and it's like whenever you rolled a 1, it would deal damage to you, or if it was at the end of the combat phase, you'd roll a dice, and if you rolled a 1, it dealt damage to you. But basically, it could hurt you, and it was pretty damn likely to kill the character wielding it. But I'm pretty sure it was when you attacked. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was every time you attacked, whenever you would roll like a 1, you would do a wound to yourself that you couldn't mitigate very easily, if at all. So that's super exciting. So I would guess if they do this one justice, it should be that it deals damage to you over time by wielding it, hopefully when you're just in combat. So like if you're in close combat with the Fell Blade, it should deal damage to you over time, but hitting someone with it causes heavy damage over time, and also gives you the execute passive. So if the enemy is below a certain percentage of health, I think it's like 10%, and you hit them, you can instantly kill them. Super exciting. Oh, they didn't. Oh my god, they didn't. The 8 burning books of KHORNE, are you kidding? Oh my. Legend tells of the 8 burning books of KHORNE spread across existence. The only books KHORNE know how to read. With any who may one day hold all 8 of them able to access an immense power of destruction unlike any other. Should fate ever curse you enough that you stumble across one of the 8 volumes of this dreaded book, then a fateful choice awaits. Should you pursue all further volumes at immense risk and cost to your faction, with an aim to eventually combine them all into one complete all-powerful book? Or should you simply play it safe and let this legend remain just that? Oh my god, is this like a new Nemesis crown? The first of these 4 new magic items, each item constituting okay, I'm curious if these are I'm curious if these are actual items. So like okay, so there's 8 books. The 8 books are being combined into 2 volumes each, into four items. So what I'm curious is this mean it's like a weapon, an enchanted item, an armor, and a talisman, and each one of them represents 2 books? Or is it that there are 4 chunks of this Exodia puzzle that you have to find, and for each that you take for your faction, because it says they're items, so I would assume that means they're legit items, and that if you combine them, it means that you have to equip them all on one character. But I guess we'll find out. Each of the volumes can be discovered, so there's 4 of them, which each contain 2 volumes. Can be discovered with an extremely low chance in your campaign, and each item offers the ability to discover the subsequent volumes of the book when equipped. Oh, so you have to equip it. Okay, so okay, I guess they're actual items. But oh, and then they increase your chances of finding more of them. When all 8 volumes have been collected, then they can be combined, and providing you are not a Khornate faction, a big decision awaits, as you will have the ability to decide what exactly to do next. Be aware, however, that each volume will take a terrible toll on your faction, only growing more difficult to manage as you discover each volume. It is up to you alone to decide if the risk and cost is worth it. Is worth what may lay at the end. That's fucking awesome. That is the coolest goddamn thing I've heard. Note, as a Khornate faction, you can still, of course, find and combine the books. However, certain gameplay elements will be different, with some negatives naturally being positive, given your links to KHORNE. Makes sense. That is so fucking hype. Oh, that's such a cool item. I love that there's an Exodia item that you have to find all the pieces to. Is this like a test drive for Nagash? It kind of feels like a Nagash-like feature. This is super cool. I am digging the hell out of this. Oh, just one more thing. At 6.2, you're getting the fucking don't look. The placeholders can't hurt if you don't look. 50% off Goblin Bolt Thrower and then Blood Knight Horse. All right, so 2 new units. We got the Hobgoblin Bolt Thrower. Looks fantastic. Looks way better built than the... Oh, I like that it's a Hobgoblin Bolt Thrower, not a Goblin Bolt Thrower. A bit less rickety than the Goblin equivalent, and with better spelling. That's how you know it's the real deal. Hobgoblin Bolt Throwers represent a uniquely accessible siege weapon for the Chaos Dwarf faction. Being the product of cunning Hobgoblin ingenuity rather than the work of Hellsmiths, these affordable engines are not bound by the usual capacity restrictions for the faction. Awesome. So if you're playing Chaos Dwarfs, this gives you like a spammable siege weapon. More accurate than their... Oh, they're also just better. More accurate than their haggard goblin counterparts, they're the perfect tool for cheaply fitting your secondary armies with some firepower while keeping the good stuff for your main force. Great. And then, oh, that artwork is gorgeous. Oh my gosh, look at that. Blood Knight sword and shield, trading in their powerful lances for shorter blades. These terrifying cavalry have immensely improved staying capacity with powerful anti-infantry profile, very cool, and the hunger they can mulch through a near limitless amount of enemy infantry, slaking their thirst on the field of battle. This does come at a significant loss of performance versus other cavalry, making them a more niche, specialized infantry crushing machine, suited for taking low casualties again and again on a long campaign. So that's fantastic. Blood Knights have always been really, really strong, but they've always had a very strong particular niche for anti-cav because of their anti-large bonus. But now there's an anti-infantry variant. So depending on who you're fighting, you can now customize them a bit more to try and figure out what your opponent's bringing. Also, this artwork is fucking gorgeous, dude. Like, look at the skin hanging off the Nightmare, and I can't tell if these are tassels or if they're supposed to be fucking entrails. They look like they're tassels because you can kind of see more of them back here. But like, it almost looks like it's the entrails hanging out of the Nightmare. That's really cool. That's it for me and the team today. We're really excited for you to get your hands on this update next week. I'm very excited for this as well. Sit tight for the full update notes and look forward to plenty more from us in the future. We'll naturally have plenty to learn from your new experiences with these changes, and we'll keep you fully updated on further improvements we'll make here. Take care, William. Awesome. Okay, I'm gonna go back to this so my hair is no longer invisible. This is fantastic. I think this is excellent news. I'm very excited this is coming next week. Yeah, I'm pretty pleased, honestly, with this. I don't think I have a ton to add. I'm extremely excited for the new magic item system. I am elated looking forward to the new magic item system. The fact that like my personal wish got implemented, literally the only thing that's not in this is I wish they would bring back the ability to explore ruins for if you're someone that really likes to hunt for items and stuff. You have another method to dedicate to that, even if they make it where like only heroes can do it, you know, or you know, whatever. Like being able to search ruins, I think should still come back as a way to get like additional forms of income, maybe little army ability, you know, kind of like how we search ocean stuff. I feel like ruins should basically be the same thing, where you like can get like a randomized type event, and you might get an item, you might get a little battle, you might get, you know, whatever. I think that would be super fair. But in any event, I'm pleased as punch. Pleased as punch. Please let me know what your thoughts are down below. Is there anything in this that jumps out at you as far as something that's particularly exciting? Is there anything that you're kind of more like, whatever? Let me know, whether it's the 2 new units that we're getting, the item rework system. They also mentioned that they're gonna be including some of the AI stuff that we've tested. They didn't say what, but it sounds like one of the systems from one of the proving grounds is also going to be coming to the game as like a permanent feature. So we'll say very excited. I'm looking forward to this. So yeah, please let me know, and I'll see you guys soon. Thanks for watching.